Back in the days before social media, backstage vlogs, or tell-all podcasts, Kayfabe was basically the unwritten law of the entire wrestling business. Wrestlers didn't just play a role in the ring, they lived their gimmick even when they stepped out into the real world. Fans genuinely believed that enemies on TV hated each other in real life, that every punch, every grudge came from personal hatred. But when the line between real and fake gets pulled too tight, there are always a few people who end up tearing that curtain down, and the price for that is never cheap. Today, we're looking back at wrestlers who were punished just for breaking Kayfabe. Let's jump right into it. Wrestling Sphere, go! Number 11. Koji Kitao. Before he ever set foot in a wrestling ring, Koji Kitao was already a known name in the Japanese sumo world. From that platform, he transitioned into pro wrestling and was pushed hard from the start. Kitao joined Genichiro Tenryu's Super World of Sport, SWS, then followed his veteran Tenryu to WWE during the partnership between the two promotions. The two even scored a huge win over Demolition at WrestleMania 7, a result that helped tighten the SWS-WWE relationship so much that John "Earthquake" Tenta was sent to SWS for crossover matches. And it was right there that Kitao's career pretty much self-destructed in a single night. Whether it was an oversized ego or frustration with the booking, Kitao decided he wasn't going to work a normal wrestling match anymore. He was going to try and turn it into a real fight with Earthquake. Instead of cooperating, the two started throwing noticeably stiffer shots, not even bothering to hide it. The match quickly became awkward and disjointed, and the crowd could feel that something was seriously off. Then came the breaking point. Kitao rolled to the floor, grabbed a microphone, and shattered Kayfabe right in front of everyone. He flat out declared that wrestling was fixed, that everything was pre-planned, and that if this were a real fight, there was no way he'd lose. It was basically a slap in the face to the company and to anyone still trying to protect the illusion of a real fight. The outcome was exactly what you'd expect. Other wrestlers had to rush in to break things up, the match was thrown out, and Koji Kitao was fired almost as soon as he got to the back. From a promising name with a big platform, he turned himself into a textbook example of how recklessly breaking Kayfabe can blow up your entire career. Number 10. Shawn Michaels. When it comes to the most infamous moments of exposing Kayfabe in WWE history, it's hard not to bring up Shawn Michaels. In the late 90s, the feud between Shawn and Bret Hart didn't just exist on TV, it was a very real hatred simmering backstage. On screen, they were booked into segments that were tense and explosive, trading barbs and brawling in front of the cameras. Behind the curtain, egos, money, career direction, and even family issues kept turning up the heat. The line between working and shooting was basically gone. Instead of keeping Kayfabe in a controlled lane, Shawn repeatedly chose to push things further. The biggest example came on an episode of Raw in 1997, when he casually dropped the now famous line that Bret had been enjoying a lot of sunny days lately. To a casual viewer, it might have sounded like a throwaway comment. But anyone who knew what was happening backstage understood exactly what HBK was implying, that the hitman, a married man, was allegedly having an affair with Sunny. At that point, it wasn't a scripted insult anymore, it was a direct shot at Bret's personal life. There was no way Bret was just going to swallow that. A few weeks later, things exploded into a real backstage fight. Shoving, swinging, and according to people who were there, Bret even ripped out a chunk of Shawn's hair. Having been attacked and publicly humiliated on live TV, Shawn snapped and tried to send a message to the company by walking out and leaving WWE for a while. On paper, he didn't receive a massive fine or an official suspension. But the whole situation did nothing to improve Shawn's reputation with management or the boys in the locker room. For fans looking back on it, from the sunny days jab to the chaotic backstage brawl, it's obvious that this wasn't just storyline heat, it was real-life drama boiling over. And Shawn was the one who stomped all over Kayfabe to drag that mess out into the open for the entire world to see. Number 9. Matt Hardy. After his feud with Kane in 2004, Matt Hardy decided to step away from the ring for a while to deal with personal issues. While he was missing from TV, sharp-eyed fans noticed something strange. Every photo of him and Lita on his personal website suddenly disappeared. When people asked, Matt only hinted that if they wanted answers, they should go ask Amy Dumas. But then emotions took over, logic went out the window, and he chose to vent in a way that was as anti-Kayfabe as it gets. Instead of keeping everything behind the curtain, Matt went online and laid out the entire breakup in detail, to the point where fans felt like they were reading a script for a Raw storyline. He claimed their relationship fell apart because Lita cheated on him, secretly getting involved with Edge, a co-worker in the same company and someone he had considered a friend. Real-life drama was dragged straight into the spotlight, exposing everything WWE usually tries to hide behind the idea of they're just characters on TV. The next twist hit even harder. In April that year, WWE informed Matt that his contract was being terminated. Nobody had to spell it out. Most fans understood exactly what price he was paying, taking the private lives of top card talent public and personally tearing down the Kayfabe the company had spent years protecting. But the audience sided with him. At shows, crowds constantly chanted Matt Hardy's name, creating so much pressure that WWE couldn't just pretend not to hear it. By July, he was re-signed and immediately thrown into a feud with Edge, which sounded like the perfect chance for on-screen revenge, but ended up feeling disappointingly flat. Matt was never booked as the triumphant hero. He came off more like someone being kept in check. Looking back at the whole situation, it's hard not to see that angle as WWE's way of punishing him for breaking Kayfabe in such a blunt, public way. Number 8. Serena Deeb. Among the disciples in CM Punk's straight edge society, Serena Deeb was arguably the one who sacrificed the most for her character. To fully become a devoted follower of the straight edge lifestyle, she agreed to have her head shaved on live TV, not an easy decision for any female wrestler. On camera, Serena solemnly vowed to stay away from alcohol, drugs, partying, and any so-called temptations, presenting herself as the perfect example of the strict philosophy Punk preached. The problem was, WWE seemed to want her to maintain that image even once she stepped off the stage, or at least look that way whenever fans were around. In August 2010, Serena was suddenly released from her contract. Rumors spread immediately. The supposed reason was that in real life she wasn't living the pure straight-edge lifestyle her character represented on screen. In other words, she was punished for acting like a normal human being instead of a 24/7 version of her gimmick. Honestly, protecting Kayfabe matters, but that kind of demand sounds ridiculous. It's like WWE firing Rikishi because he doesn't go around showing his butt everywhere he goes. The ironic part is that just a month before Serena was let go, WWE aired an angle where the entire group caught her in a bar, drinking and breaking her vow. CM Punk blew up, tore into her, and the segment came off great on TV. When fans later learned that, only a few weeks after that storyline, Serena disappeared from the company in real life, it was hard not to feel like the angle was echoing what was really going on backstage. The lesson for young wrestlers is pretty cold. Before you accept an extreme gimmick, make sure you clearly understand what the company expects from you. Not only when the cameras are rolling, but also when you walk out your front door and try to live your actual life. Number 7. Paul London. The June 11, 2007 episode of Raw was promoted as Mr. McMahon Appreciation Night, but in reality it played more like a full-on burial of the chairman. The idea was to paint Vince as a hateful dictator, so the show was filled with clips of wrestlers standing in front of the camera, taking shots at him and mocking him, basically saying, "Forget the boss, I don't respect him at all." By the end of the night, McMahon walked past a long line of wrestlers staring at him with cold, distant looks, like he was some outcast the entire locker room had turned its back on. His face was dark, heavy, and the whole thing felt like a perfectly staged walk of shame. Then the big twist hit. Vince climbed into a white limousine, the door shut, the car pulled away and, boom! A huge explosion engulfed the limo in flames. The camera lingered on the burning wreck for a long time, hammering home the message. Vince McMahon was dead, possibly the victim of an elaborate assassination plot. The storyline was meant to continue, but just a few weeks later, the real-life Chris Benoit tragedy forced WWE to scrap it entirely. Even so, someone still ended up paying a price, and that someone was Paul London. As Vince made his way between the two lines of wrestlers, everyone else kept their faces tense and serious. Paul London, however, was standing there with a big grin at exactly the wrong moment. That one smile reportedly infuriated McMahon. He felt it completely undercut the dark, dramatic tone they were going for. From that point on, whatever pushed London had seemed to hit a brick wall. He slowly slid down the card into forgettable roles, and about a year later, his contract was terminated. In later interviews, London said most of the locker room hadn't been clearly briefed on the exact finish of the segment. They were basically told, "Look at Vince and react appropriately." He never came out and flatly said his smile was the direct reason he lost his spot, but he admitted people asked him about that moment over and over. When you put all those pieces together, you don't need to be a genius to see that he likely paid the price for one split-second break in Kayfabe on live television. Number 6. William Regal. Very few people in wrestling have the kind of unique presence William Regal does. If you look back over his career, you'll see a wrestler who could do it all: technical wrestling, gritty brawling, comedy, slimy heel work, even a cold, calculating authority figure. He nailed every role. Honestly, with that level of talent, Regal deserved a much bigger push. The problem was that, early on, his career was dragged down by addiction issues. Those personal problems directly affected his in-ring performance, making management keep a cautious distance. Later, Regal openly owned his mistakes, pulled himself out of that hole, and became a genuine example of getting back up after you fall, but the stain had been there. Even so, he managed to build a very respectable run in both WCW and WWE. So when Goldberg started his meteoric rise in early 1998, the man chosen to face him was William Regal. On paper, if anyone could make a tank like Goldberg look even more dangerous, it was a seasoned veteran like Regal. But things didn't go quite the way people expected. Instead of a quick 90-second squash like the crowd was used to, the match with Regal went nearly 6 minutes, with stretches of back and forth, a lot of holds, and some shots that looked a bit too snug. Some fans felt Regal was stretching the rookie, refusing to cooperate fully with the planned format. Even though Goldberg still won clean, Regal was released not long afterward. Rumors spread that he'd been labeled uncooperative and accused of deliberately messing with the unstoppable aura they were building for Goldberg. Regal, on the other hand, insisted he was simply doing what he'd been asked to do: turn the match into a serious test, not a meaningless squash. It's hard to believe that a man willing to fully commit to ridiculous angles, like storylines involving someone supposedly peeing in his tea, would suddenly go into business for himself just out of ego. In the end, whatever truly went down between Regal, Goldberg, and WCW management that day will probably always be an unanswered question, and the incident is still brought up as one of those times a wrestler seemed to pay the price for daring to play things a little differently than Kayfabe demanded. Number 5. Daniel Puder. When Tough Enough didn't get the green light for a standalone 4th season, WWE decided to cram the competition straight into SmackDown. On paper, it sounded smart: find new talent while boosting ratings. In reality, those segments quickly devolved into bizarre skits where contestants, wrestlers, and announcers all got dragged into chaotic stunts. Every time Tough Enough came on, it felt like the regular show hit pause and viewers were teleported into some alternate universe. On the November 4, 2004 episode, the contestants were told to compete in a squat thrust challenge, and the prize for the winner was a chance to have a shoot, a real wrestling contest, with Kurt Angle. That already sounded like winning the lottery, only to realize the prize is a punch to the ribs. Still, the rules were set. Anyone who wanted to prove themselves could step up. After the drill ended, Angle called out the rookies, and Daniel Puder was the one who accepted. At first, it looked like a light grappling demo. Kurt quickly took Puder down, still fitting his image as the dominant Olympic gold medalist schooling a novice. The problem was, Puder wasn't just some clueless rookie, he had an MMA background. In a split second, he saw an opening to lock in a Kimura on Angle's arm and went for it, cinching it in tight. A few more seconds, and Kurt's arm could have been seriously injured on live national television. Luckily for everyone, the referee reacted instantly, counted Puder's shoulders to the mat, and stopped the match, even though he clearly wasn't actually being pinned. From that moment, Puder was viewed as someone who had stepped out of line in the locker room. He didn't follow the unspoken script of letting Angle humble him. Instead, he used the opportunity to show he could put the Olympic hero in real trouble. That hit both Kurt's pride and the carefully crafted image WWE was protecting. Puder still won that season of Tough Enough, but his biggest on-screen moment afterward was the 2005 Royal Rumble, where Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Hardcore Holly took turns stiffing him up as a very public message to the back. When his guaranteed first year under contract ended, WWE only offered to keep him under a standard developmental deal. Puder turned it down and left the company. Looking back at the whole story, it's hard not to draw one conclusion. Sometimes, if you try too hard to prove you're real, in a way the company doesn't want, the price you pay is your career in their eyes, and in the eyes of the entire locker room. Number 4. The Iron Sheik. Let's circle back to what we talked about at the start of the video. There was a time when Kayfabe really was the unwritten law of the whole business. Fans fully believed that wrestlers truly hated each other, that the sweat-soaked brawls in the ring were genuine fights for honor and championships, not something mapped out backstage. In that era, the Iron Sheik was the classic foreign villain, the guy who insulted America, disrespected the flag, and enraged the crowd every time he walked through the curtain. When Vince McMahon took over WWE from his father, he gradually became more open about wrestling being scripted entertainment. But that never meant he relaxed about protecting the business image. A 1987 incident made that crystal clear. After a WWE event in May of that year, Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan were pulled over by police in New Jersey for reckless driving. A quick check revealed that Duggan was under the influence of marijuana, while Sheik was caught with cocaine. Both men were handcuffed and taken into custody. When the story hit the news, the biggest shock for many fans wasn't just the drugs. It was the fact that the all-American hero Duggan had been riding in the same car as the very man who, on TV, constantly ranted against the United States. One traffic stop and one arrest were enough to crack open the carefully built Kayfabe wall around Sheik's character. Both Sheik and Duggan left the company after that incident, and the real issue went beyond drug charges. The problem was that, without meaning to, they'd exposed how the business actually worked, showing fans that bitter enemies might actually be road partners on the highway. Filmmaker Chris Bell, who later made the documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster, has said that this arrest was the moment he realized wrestling was scripted. He compared it to the day your dad gently pulls you aside and says, "Santa Claus isn't exactly what you think he is." For the Iron Sheik, that was also the moment he paid the price for having Kayfabe ripped to shreds right out in the real world. Number 3. Triple H. This is the kind of story people will keep bringing up forever, simply because everyone knows how powerful Triple H eventually became. But if you rewind back to the mid-90s, Hunter Hearst Helmsley wasn't protected or favored the way we think of the Game today. He was just one piece of the infamous Backstage group The Clique, alongside Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, a crew that was insanely talented, but also notorious for being difficult. Everything blew up after a house show at Madison Square Garden on May 19, 1996. That night, Triple H faced Scott Hall, while Shawn Michaels went up against Kevin Nash in 2 separate matches. It was right around the time Hall and Nash were getting ready to jump ship to WCW, so the backstage atmosphere was already sensitive. When the matches were over, all 4 of them, babyfaces and heels alike, came back out, got in the ring together, and hugged it out in front of the crowd in a public farewell. Emotionally, it was a real and heartfelt moment. In terms of Kayfabe, it was a massive sin. Guys who were supposed to hate each other on TV were embracing right in front of the fans. Vince McMahon was furious. But the problem was, there wasn't much he could do to the two who'd already signed with WCW, and Shawn was the WWE champion and the top star at the time. So all the heat landed on the one man left standing, Triple H. The plan to start elevating him, including having him win King of the Ring, was scrapped. Instead, Hunter was yanked straight down the card, stuck in low-tier storylines, even working goofy gimmick matches like a hog pen bout with Henry Godwinn. A guy who'd been penciled in as a future main eventer suddenly found himself knocked several rungs down the ladder, all because he broke ranks in one emotional moment. To be fair, Triple H took his punishment on the chin. He didn't bail, he didn't quit. He slowly rebuilt his position until he became one of the most important pillars in company history. And the ironic part? When he was pulled from the 1996 King of the Ring spot, McMahon had to give that opportunity to someone else, Stone Cold Steve Austin. The rest writes itself. Austin 316 was born, and the face of WWE and the entire wrestling industry changed forever. One break in Kayfabe, one sanction aimed at Triple H, accidentally opened the door to a whole new era. Number 2. Rusev. In the age of social media, Kayfabe doesn't just fade away on TV. Sometimes it gets shattered by nothing more than a single picture online. Rusev is a perfect example. On screen, he was the cold, ruthless Bulgarian brute tangled up in a messy love triangle, breaking up with Lana, flirting with Summer Rae, while Lana openly walked out with Dolph Ziggler. WWE spent months building it up with screaming matches, tears, slaps, and over-the-top drama, pure soap opera, WWE style. Then one fine morning, fans opened their phones and saw the rumor. In real life, Rusev and Lana were engaged. The news leaked, photos of the ring spread everywhere, and no one needed a script to understand what that meant. The entire love story on TV suddenly looked ridiculous. The bitter exes were actually future husband and wife. It was like watching episode 30 of a romance drama, then seeing the lead actors jump on social media and post their wedding photos. According to a lot of backstage reports, WWE management was extremely upset. Not because the two were in love, but because the news broke out of their control and blew up a storyline they'd been investing in. The fallout hit fast. Rusev was squashed on Raw in just a few minutes, then got verbally torn apart by Summer Rae in the middle of the ring. Lana disappeared from TV for a long stretch, and the entire angle was dropped almost overnight, leaving everything feeling abruptly unfinished. On paper, nobody ever came out and said, "We're punishing Rusev and Lana for breaking Kayfabe." But looking at how quickly they were pulled off TV and how their momentum evaporated, fans didn't have a hard time reading between the lines. This was the price for letting real life collide head-on with the script in a world where one click can burn an entire storyline to the ground. Number 1. Batista. If Rusev and Lana are an example of social media crushing Kayfabe, Batista's story shows a different kind of rule break, trying to keep that old-school sense of realism alive in the middle of a PG era scrubbed clean of blood. By the late 2000s, WWE had made it crystal clear, no more intentional blood on TV. The company's image had to be family, friendly for sponsors and kids, and secret blade jobs were supposed to be a thing of the past. The problem was, Batista was still heavily influenced by the older style of wrestling, the kind where blood running down your face was part of the drama. During a steel cage title match with Chris Jericho on Raw, he decided to bend the rules and blade himself to make the match look more intense, more like a fight to the last drop. For longtime fans, that little detail made the match feel bigger and more emotional. For Vince McMahon, it was a direct slap in the face to the new policy. Backstage afterward, things were reportedly extremely tense. The chairman went frame by frame, checking who knew what, who was involved, and who allowed it to happen. The fine Batista received was rumored to be massive, big enough that even he was stunned. Others connected to the situation, from Jericho to the referee to the producer, also got hit with penalties, and the animal had to shoulder most of the blame. In the end, Batista's career didn't collapse because of that incident. He still main event, still moved on to movies, and became a full-blown Hollywood star. But for him personally, it was a crystal clear moment. The line between the bloody, gritty wrestling of the past and the polished PG product driven by sponsorship deals had shifted for good. And that one attempt to break the rules to make it feel real was enough to show him exactly what it costs when you push against corporate-style Kayfabe. Which case on today's list stuck with you the most? Who do you think was punished unfairly, and who brought it on themselves? Drop a comment and share your take, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Wrestling Sphere, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our other crazy backstage stories.